That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, moving past, we'll still be talking a little bit about ULM and just some of the things that we saw. Obviously, it all applies moving forward to a certain extent, but it's time to kind of shift the focus to Wisconsin. And this is an interesting team. But before we get into Wisconsin, I do want to talk a little bit about Alabama's schedule moving forward, because after a loss to Florida State on the road, obviously you saw the road struggles last year, and then you start seeing the road games that are upcoming. It's like, what are your expectations for this team moving forward, especially when they have to go on the road and play a quality opponent?
Those 4 SEC road games, I mean, look at those teams now in terms of what you thought about them this summer. Obviously, Georgia's good. I mean, Georgia's a national championship contender and a playoff contender. You know they're good. Has South Carolina or Missouri done anything? South Carolina, Missouri, or Auburn? They all 3 look as good or better to me today than they did this summer, particularly Auburn and Missouri. But even South Carolina, we knew they'd be a challenge with Lenore Sellers. I think all 4 of those SEC road games are just absolutely brutal. And that's why the Wisconsin game and the other home games are just so huge. Because I'm telling you, I don't mean, everybody knows me as Mr. Sunshine. I don't mean to show up as Mr. Black Cloud today. But you better win those home games. Because I'll say right now, Alabama's not going to go 4-0 on the road in these SEC games. They're just not. I would bet a large amount of money that they're not going to go 4-0 on the road. 3-1 probably puts you, in the playoff. And I don't rule out 2-2 in those 4 putting you in playoff. I know everybody says, no, but that's 9-3. You're out. You're out. Not this year. 9-3. Playing a really tough schedule like Alabama is, you're not out this year. There's going to be other 9-3 teams. And to kind of, we can't prove what I'm saying right now, but I think a good litmus test for how right I am or how wrong I am is this weekend. There's 4 SEC games. Vandy is at South Carolina. Florida is at LSU. Arkansas is at Ole Miss. And Tennessee is at Georgia. I like all 4 home teams. I like all 4 home teams, including Tennessee. I like all 4 teams at home. And if I'm right about what Alabama's facing, it's related to this weekend. And that I just think the SEC is just no place to win on the road. Not right now. And I know Ole Miss got a road win, but look who they beat. Either
Correct.
the worst or second worst. I'm sorry, Kentucky fans that are listening. Either the 16th or the 15th team in the SEC. And did Ole Miss show up and run all over them? No, they did not. No, they played a real football game for 60 minutes and to win that game, got behind. And that was and Alabama doesn't get to play at Kentucky or at Mississippi State, who beat the defending Big 12 champs. Alabama doesn't get that. They get at 4 of the best. I'm going to say 20. I know that might be overdoing it, but I think that's 4 of the best 20 teams in college football: Georgia, Missouri, Auburn, and South Carolina. I'm comfortable saying 4 of the top 20. That's tough.
Yeah, that is really tough. And we got to be able to acknowledge that, because, and you're not saying that they're going to go 6-6 or 7-5. Maybe 8-4. I think when you lose to Florida State, I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility. I know no one wants to hear that right now, but you at least got to acknowledge, going into the season, I've always been one of those, I can see anywhere from 11-1 to 9-3, sweet spot 10-2. Well, if 9-3 was kind of the floor before, we've seen just how rough it can look, and there's kind of a larger sample size as far as road struggles. And when you look at their road schedule, it's like they're going to have a lot of these, but at the same time, here's what I will say about that. In some ways, should we be more worried about playing Vanderbilt at home? Or, and I guess that's, Oklahoma, that's going to be another opponent where there's like a revenge factor and you're getting that, opponent at home. But I will say this, it's like, there's only one game that was against a very good opponent that Alabama went on the road and they struggled, and that was Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
So all of the other losses, they were to teams that were good enough to beat you if you didn't take them seriously enough, but they weren't considered an elite team.
Correct. Right.
And so that's where it's like, again, like they go on the road and play LSU, a really good football team who I'd put in the Missouri range, maybe the South Carolina range.
Right.
You know,
Last year's LSU team, I would say, is equivalent to Missouri and South Carolina this year.
and just had an absolutely dominant performance.
Yeah.
It was a game that you had to take seriously. You know, we understand now you got to take all of them seriously, which is what we always say. But even fans, they're like, we can play so and so this weekend. They're not very good. We can, you know, our actions don't always reflect our words as far as how we feel about these things. But what gives me, you know, and we'll have to continue to see it. But when you see these really big games, that is one thing Kalen DeBoer has always done well, is have his team prepared against quality opponents. And that's sometimes going in a hostile environment. Sometimes it's getting teams at home. We'll just have to wait and see. What will be the litmus test for me, they could lose to Georgia, but if they go on the road and they battle with Georgia, there's a good game plan. And because based off of what we saw against Florida State, I don't see a whole lot of people picking Alabama to beat Georgia in Athens, regardless of what happens with Wisconsin. Correct. I don't see a whole lot of people. There could be a large percentage of people who think Georgia's going to run away with this. Hey, if Florida State's capable of running away with a game at home against Alabama, Georgia's certainly capable too. If they go on the road and they battle and it is a close game and they had a chance to win at the end and all those things, then I will say it was a great game plan. Georgia right now, they're probably just a little bit better than you. Maybe on a neutral field, it would have been different. Maybe in Bryant-Denny, it would have looked a little different. But I will feel pretty good about this team's ability. And what will be good as you talk about this schedule, there's not a whole lot of games where you're going to be able to approach it and say, that's a dub. You know, like last year, Oklahoma, dub, Vanderbilt, dub. And so you're looking at Alabama's schedule right now, and it's like Wisconsin, this is a good litmus test too, but I think Alabama's still pretty pissed off. No one's still giving them a whole lot of respect because of what they did against ULM. But then you got, Georgia, Vanderbilt at home based off what they did against you last year. They look pretty good right now. I don't know what their schedule is like leading up to that game, but, that could end up being a top 25 football team before it's all said and done, depending on the schedule. Missouri's top 25 right now, and that's away. Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, what they did to you last year, what they're ranked. Eastern Illinois, who's another one of those like ULMs where some teams, like you don't even have to bring your best, but you can just out-talent somebody. That's one of those games where you look at it like that. And then Auburn, the rest of the schedule, there are none of these Oklahoma Vanderbilts from last year. And so that kind of, in some ways, I don't think it's good that it's a more challenging schedule, but hopefully if they continue to do what they've always done in these big games, now it's going to get, as far as like the grind of it, it's going to wear the team down. I'm sure there's no way they're going unscathed through this process. It's a matter of how scraped up they really get.
You have 8 SEC games, and probably, and I'll use this term, a relatively easiest of the 8 SEC games they play is the home game against Vanderbilt. An offense they could not stop a year ago, an offense that, frankly, in Tallahassee, it's going to be very logical to be concerned about stopping the Vanderbilt offense in that game, just simply because of the style at which they play. And all respect to Diego Pavia, who runs his system at quarterback probably as well as any quarterback in the country. And that's the easiest. That's like, well, that's, you better win that one, because LSU, Tennessee, and Oklahoma, those are real good football teams. And then I'm just, today is just one of those days where I wake up just looking at the SEC going, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 10 teams that could make the playoff. I mean, it's just a parity has sort of arrived in the SEC, at least for this year. And I don't know whether it's a long-term thing. My feeling is that it is. It's a result of the rule. But when you change the rules dramatically, you've changed the board. When you change all the rules of chess, everything that you knew about chess in the past doesn't really matter anymore. And they've changed the rules. And the result is that everyone's roster is different than it used to be. The makeup of it, the composition of it's different than it used to be. And that's why we're getting results like probably the number 16 team in the SEC beating the defending Big 12 champs. We're getting a Vanderbilt that can beat Alabama and almost beat Texas. They wouldn't have done that without the transfer portal and NIL. The fact that they could get Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers and pay players SEC money, which means Vanderbilt's now getting some SEC talent that they weren't getting before because they pay SEC money with rev share and some NIL. It's a different world, and that world looks a lot more like the NFL. And I sort of feel like the NFL team that woke up and went, oh, at the Ravens, at the Bills, at the Packers, at the Lions. Oh, this will be fun.
I mean, you're not wrong. And I mean, it's, going to Vanderbilt, it's like, you're correct. They beat Alabama, and that was just such an embarrassing loss for Alabama. Let's not forget, they went on the road and they should have beaten a top, 25, a team that went, 10-3 in Missouri in overtime, and they ended up completely blowing that. But that was on the road, and they got to 10 wins. They kept it competitive with Texas. This wasn't like this was an Alabama only thing. But when you had Charleston Southern in week 1 for Vanderbilt. You had Virginia Tech, who they completely destroyed. You play at South Carolina this weekend. Now, granted, if you're competitive in that game and you lose that game, you've got Georgia State after. I think last year, one of the big perception problems for Alabama, especially at the time that it had happened, was that Georgia State had upset Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
they didn't take them seriously, and it's like, wow, you just got beat by a team that got beat by Georgia State. That is as low as it gets. And that was, if you just make that a win, which it would be 99 out of 100 times, I feel like, then they're now a team that goes 7-5 last year, finish 8-5 if you include the bowl game. And, that wouldn't have been considered as bad of a loss as it really was, considering how competitive they were in some of these other games. And then they would have Utah State. So it's very possible that they're going into Tuscaloosa on October 4th, 4-1, if they can have their lone loss being a respectable loss against South Carolina. Granted, they hadn't really played anybody up to that point. I could see them being number 25 or number 24 based off of some of the issues or trouble that they caused teams last year.
It bothers me. And again, first of all, Alabama should not have lost to Vanderbilt last year. Alabama have more good players than Vanderbilt. I do think that there was a lot of Georgia hangover and a lot of transition issues. And there's no excuse for Alabama losing to Vanderbilt last year. So I'm not making an excuse. But I am saying this. I think as Alabama fans, and this is probably true of fans everywhere, but particularly Alabama, because we have a reputation for this about living in the past. The Alabama fans that are like, how could you lose to Vanderbilt? And they say it in a way that makes it sound like this is Vanderbilt circa 1988 or 2004 or pretty much any period in Vanderbilt history. That's living in the past. That's what we're talking about. That's living in the past. Vanderbilt is now a completely legitimate SEC football team. That's why South Carolina, who's in the top 25 and thinks they're a playoff team, they're gearing up for a 60-minute football game this weekend. They know what's coming to town. I mean, Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech way worse in Blacksburg than South Carolina did in Atlanta. And I just use it as an example. Vanderbilt's an example of how the bottom of the league is way up and the very top of the league is a little down compared to what their rosters looked like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And when you got the bottom of the league moving up and the top of the league moving down, what you got? Parity. That's what the NFL's got. Where there are teams. I mean, the Lions are better than the Browns. They are. But the Lions don't go play Cleveland on autopilot and think it's just an easy win, because the difference between the two isn't a gulf. It's more like a lake.
That is exactly right. And I think everybody deals with this to an extent. Like, obviously I've been following Mississippi State a little bit more closely. They just got a massive win over Arizona State, the number 12 team in the country. Just as far as Jeff Lebby, after going 2-10 last year, getting that win. But it's yesterday was Tuesday, today's Wednesday, and they're still talking about it. And to me, that was kind of us in a lot of ways with Georgia last year.
Yeah.
And it's like they're pretty fortunate because they have Alcorn State, who is 0-2, has lost to some directional school like by double-digit points, and lost to Alabama A&M. And so they have Northern Illinois coming in week 4. If Northern Illinois was this weekend, considering a lot of they could have been in big trouble where you get a massive win over Arizona State, very following week, you end up dropping a game you're not supposed to against Northern Illinois.
They'd be on upset alert if it was Northern Illinois this weekend. Instead, they're so lucky they have Alcorn, who has a quarterback, I'm sure, that's not even as good as one of Diego Pavia's drunk brothers.
I mean, it is, and we're not. I mean, I guess that is a shot at Alcorn State, but I mean, this fact, it's true.
Well, they don't have a chance against
Yeah.
an SEC team, even playing Mississippi State's C game, which
Yes.
they should still trounce Alcorn. They should. But
And
like you said, it's a great point you're making about how they're still talking about that in Starkville. And I get that they are. They are so fortunate that they get an FCS opponent this week and not even Northern Illinois, because we would be talking about on the show right now. We'd be going upset alert.
100%. And that's, they could end up struggling relative to how they would have looked against Alcorn State. And just, it's still in the grand scheme of things, if you box score it, you're not going to know. It's going to be 45 to 14 or something like that. But if you actually watch the game, I wouldn't be shocked at all if there was some hangover. Maybe that will be enough for them to recover and say, hey, we still got to get our heads down, and then they can be prepared for Northern Illinois. But it's this isn't a Mississippi State problem. It's not an Alabama problem. Success is something that everybody's got to deal with. But what I'm thinking is, at a certain point, you beat Wisconsin and you handle business, you beat ULM this past weekend. No one's really seeing it. We're all saying we feel better about the effort and all those things, the things that you can control. It feels like they were controlling those and doing a better job with it. But as far as does that right the ship as far as Florida State? No. If they destroy Wisconsin, will it right the ship as far as Florida State? No. It really won't. You'll feel better about it. But it's not we're definitely going into Georgia now. We're going to be super competitive, and I think we're going to win. Alabama could absolutely win. I'm just saying that as far as national media all of a sudden giving Alabama all the recognition and hype that they were preseason, I don't think that that's going to change based off any result that happens against Wisconsin. So, but what I am, the whole point in saying that is I would be shocked if the coaching staff, maybe this weekend against Wisconsin, which is why it's one to circle and monitor, surely not 2 weeks after what happened against Florida State, though. I'm hoping that they're still laser focused. But if they can get past Wisconsin, that's not a problem. There's not, other than Eastern Illinois, there's not another game on the schedule that I feel like they're going to be like, yeah, we got this. We don't have to game plan as much. Let's hide some things. Let's go half cocked in here. We're going to be fine. I think even against Florida State, opening week, a lot of transfers. It's like, man, how often does transfers everything come together? They're going to be, they'll probably be doing stuff that will beat themselves. We don't want to reveal too much. Let's go in there doing this and this. And that first drive, they had to earn it, but they were able to kind of, in some ways, do what they wanted to do, move the football down the field. And then when they got hit in the mouth on the ensuing drive on offense, and then the defense came out there, offense once again drove down there and was in a position to kick a field goal, missed the field goal, and now things are going awry, and they did not respond well. Yeah. I'm just saying it could, in some ways, you never want a gauntlet of a schedule. Like this, because you just got to think somewhere along the way, no matter how good you're playing, you're going to slip up because maybe you're wore down or whatever. But what I am saying is they're going into a game just assuming that they're going to be fine. I don't foresee them doing that, which could in some ways end up being a good thing.
Fans take some games lightly, and I think we're just not being illogical and realizing that our teams are also made up of human beings. That emotionally, young kids that are emotionally, logically, they're not that much different of people than we are, and they take games lightly too. And one of my theories, I have a few, but one of my theories about why Florida State went so awry is, I think they kind of showed up to play a 2-10 football team and got punched in the mouth by a 10-2 football team.
That's a good way to put it.
Showed up to play, a bad team. And instead they played a very good team that, as far as we know, may end up in the college football playoff.
It could be a number of – it could just be a perfect storm against you where it is Ty Simpson's first start. There's some nerves there.
Yeah.
It's Isaiah Horton being banged up. I went back and watched the game again because I do remember seeing Ryan Williams pre-concussion he was like, I remember seeing him limping. It looked like he had a band on his left hamstring. And I was like, let me make sure. Cause I've mentioned that multiple times. That sure would be embarrassing if I went back and looked and I couldn't find anything on that. And I've been saying that. No, 100%. And I don't know when the band showed up. It was a black band. So I was trying to see early in the game. You just couldn't tell. They had to zoom in. And sometimes when they zoom in, it's waist up where you don't see the legs. But after he got hit on one, it was the one that was one where he kind of threw it up in the air for a drop, one of his 3 drops, and then he got hit. He falls to the ground, he gets up, and he's limping pretty bad. It looked to me like it was like a knee-to-knee contact with the defender, which is what I think it was, but that's where you notice that band on his left hamstring. I have no idea. I'm not making excuses for the guy. I'm saying he could have not been 100%. No idea. But then you got the weather element where it's like you're practicing in the mornings, the humidity. Was there an adjustment period? Did they get wore down? Did they not handle it well? It was 2-10 football team. It's transfer portals. Don't really know what to expect where you're trying to do the preparation.
Difficult preparation.
Very difficult. I mean, and here's the thing. It might not be any one thing. Bottom line is you didn't do what you needed to do in order to win that football game or even put yourself in a position to win that football game. It's not like we're walking around saying, oh, it's fine. All that was fine. The one thing you could control, you couldn't control the weather. You couldn't control exactly knowing what it was going to look like. You couldn't control the guys were banged up. The one thing you could control was effort. And that was a massive, and intensity and physicality. That was a massive issue. They let Florida State take the fight to them. So it doesn't matter about all the rest of it. I am saying, though, as far as that could absolutely impact things as well. Anyways, go ahead.
No, I was just saying one quick thing. I think when you don't really know, it's the worst analogy ever. I grew up playing tennis and playing state tournaments, and I'd never been a top 4 seed before. That was a big deal. A top 4 seed in the tournament, so you're expected to get in a 16 or 32 man draw. You're expected to get to the top 4. And again, I'm really young, but I was a top 4 seed at this tournament. I think it was in Huntsville, and I won a couple matches. So I get to the quarters. And it's the first time I could remember in a statewide tournament where I was in the quarters and a higher seed than the guy I was playing. And the guy I was playing, I didn't know. I think he was local, and he didn't play in as many statewide tournaments as I did. And I didn't know him. But since I didn't know him and I'm seeded higher, I lost. I lost. And B, I can't help but wonder if I didn't know this guy. So I assumed. And then, he wins a few points, and then I'm frustrated the whole time and thought, I'm a top 4 seed. I'm supposed to. And of course, it's a stupid analogy because it has nothing to do with big time college football and actual real athletes playing a big time sport. But when you don't know your opponent and you assume you're getting 2-10, then I got a long ride home from Huntsville, and they're still hearing about Florida State.
Hey, you can make those type of analogies for anything, and it absolutely plays. Blockbuster didn't take Netflix seriously enough. It's one of those things where, and they're where's Blockbuster and where's Netflix? They had
Netflix is like they're mailing DVDs to people and expecting them to mail them back, and that's their plan.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, Blockbuster's trying to copy that plan, and Netflix is like, hey, we'll give you something called streaming where you can hop on here and watch whatever we put on here for you. It's great. And
now
they had a chance to
T-Rex.
Yeah,
I mean, Netflix is a grizzly bear.
That's exactly right. I mean, people underestimate people all the time. And then, hey, go back to the Bible, David Goliath, right? So I mean, yeah. So it everybody just as far as knowing how much that Florida State game is Alabama, I still think it's difficult. But the one thing that I've continued to reiterate is I can't get past the lack of effort, and that I never need to see any signs of that ever again. That cannot be a part of what they are as far as their identity, because it really doesn't matter about the rest of it. Because if you're not giving 110% effort and the other team is, and trust me, Alabama's going to get everybody's 110% effort. Some teams that are good but not as good as you can, and in some cases will beat you. That is the bottom line. So, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about with ULM specifically before we move on and talk about Wisconsin is the quarterback play, which we already talked about on Monday, but I was just thinking about this. Does it in some ways hurt Ty Simpson that both Austin Mack and Keelan Russell come in, and I'm not saying they didn't skip a beat, but pretty close, where it's to a point where does Alabama have 3 amazing quarterbacks, which a lot of people would say yes, but the inexperience and stuff, I think if you played certain teams, would Austin Mack have done better than Ty Simpson in Tallahassee with Keelan Russell? But though, as flawless as they looked and as easy as they made it look, I was thinking about it, I'm like, that just goes to show you it was a true freshman getting his first ever playing time in a college football game, and he had looked like he'd been doing it for 10 years. Now, some of that's just how Keelan Russell was wired. I'm fully willing to acknowledge that. I think some of that was the opponent, though, and just how bad ULM is. So this is why I say Ty was better in week 1 than a lot of people give him credit for. I also think he struggled more than others are willing to acknowledge. But when it comes to week 2, he looked phenomenal. He looked in command. He looked confident. But I also don't think we should take that and say Ty's got everything figured out. What I'm hoping is this weekend against Wisconsin, because of how, the style of football in which they play with a defensive-minded head coach, I'm hoping it presents some challenges where it's got to be some things that he's got to overcome, and he can work his way through that, manage his way through it, and he can come out the other end saying, that was a Power 4 Big Ten football team, one of the 2 juggernauts. Maybe they're not one of the best, but I mean, I was able to do what I needed to do, and I looked efficient and effective, and I helped us get a massive win. That, to me, would do 10 times more for his confidence than probably anything that happened against ULM this past weekend.
Oh, I love that point, and I agree totally. I think it's an opponent that's unlike the first 2. I don't think, and gosh knows we've been wrong, Tallahassee Exhibit A, but I don't think Wisconsin's going to hit Alabama in the mouth like Florida State did. I mean, I not defensively. I mean, I think they're good. This is a legitimate good test, but they're not going to shock Alabama with how good they are. We've seen 2 games. We've seen them. We sort of know what's come. Played them last year. Now you've seen 2 games. They're not going to shock Alabama. I think Alabama knows exactly who they are and where they are and how good they are. And they're a lot better than Monroe. They're just a lot better, and Ty faced Monroe, by the way, in the first. Monroe, because of the Florida State game, we don't think about it in these terms, but Louisiana Monroe probably had some false hope in the dressing room before the game started because they saw what a disaster Alabama was the week before. And they're like, hey, this team's a muck. Their culture's bad. They're a mess. We've won here before. It was 20 years ago, but we've won here before. They probably had some level of false hope. And Ty went and played that Monroe team. Keelan and Austin got to play against a Monroe team that was already beaten. And Keelan was probably, I don't keep up with Monroe's numbers. And by that, I mean their numbers. That was probably not their ones that Keelan was going up against late in the game because they don't want to get kids hurt. And once the game was over. So I want everybody to take that into account. A little bit like A-Day. I think what Austin Mack and Keelan Russell did was look really good on A-Day, which is a thing. That's a thing. I'm not disregarding it, just diminishing it a little. Ty was going up against the ones that Monroe had that sort of believed they had a chance. So I think people should take that into account. But Ty's going to play an even better Wisconsin team. And let's remember, Milroe had a good game against Wisconsin a year ago. Milroe had one of his better games of the year, and it's one of those games we don't talk about, but he didn't really have any issues. He threw it and he ran it, and he had a nice game. I think this is a good test for Ty. I think when we'll really know about Ty is he was in the ditch in Tallahassee and couldn't drive the team out. Georgia's going to throw him in a ditch again. That's what we'll be talking about, and thankfully we have a 2-week build-up to it because as far as I'm concerned, Clint, me and you could do 4 weeks on Alabama, Georgia. It's going to be so good to build up to it. But Georgia is going to throw Ty in a ditch. And now Ty's got now this time, based on what he learned before and his improvement against Monroe, hopefully improvement that we see against Wisconsin, is he now able to right the ship when it starts listing one side or the other, like Georgia's going to force. And so you got to use Wisconsin to build to that moment because more tough moments are coming and Ty's got to respond better than he did in Florida.
That's right. And everybody does. And, I know that it seems like it's like, man, yeah, Clint, you were really pessimistic last week. I was pretty pissed off. I felt betrayed based off of things I'd heard and the things that I attached my name to.
A lot too.
Yeah. And then we get accused of being the liars. But that is what it is. That's part of the job. I'm always
Yeah.
going to accept my responsibility in that. But and then this week it's like they look really good, and I want to acknowledge that. I think these were valuable reps for a lot of these guys. I'm just putting context where it's like, hey, if you don't see 17 of 17 against Wisconsin, that's okay. It's just because he did it against Louisiana Monroe or anything close to that. Don't expect that against a Power 4 Big Ten competition. If you get it or anything close, praise that performance and say that is impressive. It's just don't expect it going in. That is kind of appreciated if it happens. Don't expect it going in. Speaking of Wisconsin, though, because this is a team that, like, quarterback has been banged up. Billy Edwards Jr. Don't know if he's going to play. Like, he played some in the first game. I think it was a knee injury, if I'm not mistaken, and he's kind of been, yeah. So, I mean, haven't really seen a whole lot of him. And then Danny O'Neal came in kind of, I mean, I saw some good. I saw some not good. This is a team that wants to run the football, and then they have play action kind of concepts kind of built off of that they want to get to. But it all starts, it's not done in the same way as those old, big, powerful Wisconsin teams that want to just be a sledgehammer right at you with those big cornbread-fed offensive linemen. That's not what they kind of are anymore. It's a lot of outside zone. It's more finesse, but they want to run the football, and they want to play off of that as far as their passing game. And then I think their running back is a true freshman in Dylan Jones, who, once again, looks like he's going to end up being a pretty good player before it's all said and done. Young, still growing, going to be a hostile environment. But before we, first of all, share some of your thoughts on Wisconsin and kind of what you think about them as a team before we move on.
I think they're overall pretty similar to last year. The team that we played in Madison, and I know for Alabama fans that means, oh, so we're going to win 42-10, like last year. Maybe. But let's remember when I said that they're like last year. Last year's Wisconsin team pushed Penn State, who was a Final Four team. They pushed Oregon, who won the Big Ten and were the favorites to win the playoff going in. I mean, so they were a better team last year than Alabama fans know. If all you know of Wisconsin was the 4 quarters with Alabama and Madison, you missed a fairly decent football team. I mean, because again, they played other good teams like Alabama. Only Alabama beat them like that. I think Iowa beat up on them pretty good, but Iowa's really good on defense. I mean, one thing, Iowa's easy to make fun of because the offense is so bad. But defensively, those are some dudes now. The reason they keep winning despite it is because the defense is great. So Iowa beat them up pretty good. But they pushed Penn State, they pushed Oregon. This is not a terrible football team. I would just say that they're a mid Big Ten team. But that doesn't mean that they're bad. They're going to show up with a lot of kids recruited to play Power 4 football, like the freshman running back that he talked about, Dylan Jones. I mean, this is a talented kid. He just hasn't found his way yet. Danny O'Neal, this might surprise a lot of people. And my favorite fact about Wisconsin Sweep, people don't know much about Danny O'Neal, who's QB2, who very may likely be the starting quarterback this weekend if Billy Edwards Jr. is still hurt. Danny O'Neal last year was at San Diego State. He was one of only 2 true freshmen starting quarterbacks in the whole country. The other one was Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. Danny O'Neal started week 1 at San Diego State. And I know you say, well, at San Diego State, it's still a thing. If it wasn't a thing, there'd have been more than 2. He was one of 2 true freshman starters from game 1 the whole season on. Did well enough at San Diego State that he wanted a larger stage, a larger platform for himself, a more visible position. Wisconsin gave him that opportunity, quickly rose to QB2. Now the starter's hurt, and Danny O'Neal played. Like Clint said, showed some good things. Still a young quarterback, still new to this level, has never played a team as good as Alabama. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, watch out for Danny O'Neal. No, what I'm saying is it's a legitimate player. And Alabama learned its lesson in Tallahassee. You prepare every week like you're playing a really good football team. Wisconsin is going to show up with good players. Ricardo Hallman's a really good corner. Vinny Anthony at wide receiver is a playmaker. He's good return guy too. He can make plays returning punts even. Vinny Anthony, he's a name to watch. I'm familiar because he's from where some relatives are. They got a linebacker named Tackett Curtis. Good, solid, like cut out of a magazine Big Ten linebacker. He looks exactly like you think a Big Ten inside linebacker is supposed to look. These guys have been at Ohio State and Nebraska and Penn State forever. Wisconsin's got one. Tackett Curtis actually was a true freshman starter at Southern Cal. I mean, so highly recruited, came from Louisiana all the way out to Southern Cal, started 8 games as a true freshman, big 6'2", 235-pound guy that, I'm sure got strong lifting bales of hay in Louisiana, up in North Louisiana. I'm just saying that they got some players. This is not Louisiana Monroe. This is a good football team that's liable to win six or so games, 7 games. And we heard Luke Fickell say this week this game circled for them. They were embarrassed over what happened a year ago. They want to make up for that embarrassment. I'm this is a good football team. Alabama's favored by 20 for a reason. And ultimately, we'll predict the game, and I think that line is probably going to prove to be about roughly right.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And Curtis Tackett, I remember he was like a top 100 recruit.
I think I said
or Tackett. Yeah, Tackett. It's Tackett Curtis.
Tackett Curtis. Yeah, it's just so he's got one of those names.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So when you say it out loud, you're like, wait a minute, I got the last name first. No.
Yeah, Tackett Curtis. He's a
like
good
somebody
player.
named Doe John.
Yeah.
Is there somebody named Doe John out there?
I know a Dijon.
Closest we're gonna get, I guess.
But they kind of defensively, it's listed as like a 2-4-5 defense with some 3-4. They're going to be kind of multiple. No one's living in the exact same thing pretty much every time. But you know what? I think it's a little bit deceiving because Corey Walker is listed as one of their starting outside linebackers, and he's 6'5", 297 pounds. So like you look at like Alabama's Bandits, who were considered defensive linemen, they do some 2-point stance stuff too. They're technically outside linebackers, and sometimes they'll do 3-4 looks, and there will be a bandit as an outside linebacker opposite the wolf. So it's like and those guys are 265, 278, 282, 283, not 297, pretty much a 300-pound guy. So I think that's a little bit deceiving. I don't want anybody to think, man, they only put 2 defensive linemen out there. We should be able to run the ball. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying don't let scheme or anything confuse you on kind of what that is. It's more of like a 4-2-5 type of look. It's just, how they define it looks a little bit different. Something that I did want to bring up about something I noticed against ULM, and it's kind of, looking ahead with it, is it felt like at one point I noticed that Isaiah Faga is in at nose.
Yeah.
6'2", 296 pounds, a little bit, some disruptive traits, pretty explosive off the football, not what I would consider to be a big, powerful type of nose whatsoever. You even look at him at 6'2", 296 pounds, then you look at James Smith at 297, and it's like I still think James Smith, from a power standpoint, would hold up better as a nose than a guy like Isaiah Faga. I think he needs to be situational and not rotational. But I noticed him out there. And then I noticed that to his left or his right is Jordan Renaud, who's, 265 pounds. And then you look to the other side and it's Edric Hill, 284 pounds. Behind them, you got Justin Jefferson, 227, kind of considered to be an undersized linebacker. You look at Wolf, it's Jan Zapier, not really the dominant edge setter. My point is it was a 2nd and 9 situation when I noticed this one particular play. And the reason I noticed it is that I noticed that Isaiah Faga kind of, he did okay, but I mean, they're inside zones. They're double teaming all 3 of the defensive linemen. You had the 0 technique nose. You had the 2-4 eyes on the inside shoulder of the tackles. And, they're responsible. The defensive ends are responsible for B gap. And, it was just pretty much across the board. Just don't think the run fits are there. But it's 282-pound average up front with your defensive line. When's the last time we could say that about an Alabama defensive line? Your biggest guy being 296 pounds, so sub 300. And then you got a guy who's not considered a great edge setter. That's kind of been a deficiency for him, an undersized linebacker like Justin Jefferson. I just was looking at that and thinking, I understand that some of this is through necessity. And I also understand that some of this is, opponent, and you feel like you could get away with something like that. But on that particular play, it was 2nd and 9. They go inside zone. Running back gets 9.5 yards and it's the first down. They, ULM didn't have a whole lot of success anywhere on offense. But when you talk about things, Kane Womack mentioned there were some things that they put on tape that they're going to have to answer for later. And I don't know what that is. I was trying to kind of go back and see what that is. I do know run fits. Sometimes they weren't there. But when you got a dude that is just so much better than their dudes, like LT Over can, he can end up just shedding a guy making the play when really would he have done that when he wasn't really in position because he was able to cover or compensate for someone else not doing their job. Against ULM, you can get away with stuff like that. Can you get away with that against Wisconsin or Georgia or Vanderbilt? I think that is kind of his point, is that, you like the energy and effort that they played with, but they still got things to clean up. How concerned are you? We think they're going to get Tim Keenan back. And then you got Tim Keenan as a 325-pound nose. You got 303-pound London Simmons, who's got a little bit more power. He can be the rotational piece there. Maybe use Isaiah Faga more as a situational player. So that should help. But when you start talking about the lack of size due to some of these injuries, that kind of starts to become a little bit of a concern for Alabama moving forward.
I think just stopping the run. I mean, I think you said it. I mean, you went deeper into the weeds, which everybody that listens can greatly appreciate because it's a great explanatory thing. But just in bigger picture, last year when Alabama struggled defensively, it was largely stopping the run. And then game one this year, they get they get their butts kicked, and the other team only threw the ball 14 times the whole game, completing 9. The other team completed 9 passes, and Alabama got their butts kicked, because why? Couldn't stop the run. So Wisconsin sort of has that identity. Now, as Clint pointed out earlier in the show, this isn't typical or vintage Wisconsin. It's not Ron Dane and 5 Nebraska-like offensive linemen from the 90s. It's not that anymore. So, but it is still a little bit their identity. That's why Fickle got rid of Phil Longo and bought in Grimes, who's an old offensive line guy. They want to get back to, and then they get a highly recruited back. I think that this is going to be a challenge on the ground. I mean, it's the thing to watch for. If you're Alabama defense, like, what am I looking for this weekend to know if we're any good? Can they stop the run? Because this is going to get harder as these SEC teams, starting Tennessee, who runs the ball as well as anybody year to year these days, you're going to have to get better against the run, or you're not going to like the 1-loss record at the end of the season. It's that simple. This is directly affecting the 1-loss record, how you do against the run. Against Wisconsin, they shouldn't give up much because this isn't one of the better rushing attacks they're going to face all year, though it is a challenge in terms of what they want to do, what they have a history of doing, and Jeff Grimes being their new OC. So stopping the run, looking at those overall numbers, and if they don't stop the run, it's time to start asking serious questions about, is this personnel or is it scheme? Or is it a Jimmy Stein answer who normally says, well, it's a little bit of both? And I know that's a terrible, boring answer, but it's also the right one most of the time. But if they struggle stopping the run against Wisconsin, that is a blinking light about trouble to come.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know if Tim Keenan's going to be back. Maybe he is. He's probably going to be on a pitch count if he is. I would assume they're not going to throw him out there and then him be majority of the snap guy. But the way it was supposed to look, the reason that we were all excited about it is you got Tim Keenan, an Ox in there as your starter. You got Jeremiah Beeman, who had beefed up to 314 pounds, had heard great things about him all throughout the offseason. You got London Simmons, a true freshman, who's like, hey, this guy's actually doing good enough things where he can be relied on as another rotational piece, kind of beef that up. And so, you really feel good about that position. You lose your top 2 guys, the only ones with any sort of experience. And I mean, Jeremiah Beeman didn't really have any either, to be honest, but at least he had played against Michigan and he kind of knew what it was like. You go from that to a true freshman and a redshirt freshman, and the redshirt freshman is at this point it's not how he wins as far as having to consistently take on double teams and holding up at the point of attack. He does some things that can compensate, but that's something that I'm looking at and I'm thinking this guy does not need to be the number 2 rotating consistently until he continues to get bigger and stronger. And then we kind of, see where it's at that point as far as moving forward. Not saying this is a career thing for him, but he's only in year 2. And I thought it was going to be a 3 tech, but the reason that I think that they are playing him as a nose is when you are a 3 tech defensive tackle, a James Smith or an Edric Hill, you bounce outside when you go into those 3-man fronts. You're playing 4-eye inside shoulder of the tackle, 5. When you are playing the nose, you go from the furthest you're going to kind of kick out is a 3 tech. So with Isaiah Faga being 6'2", doesn't have the length where you really want him playing a 3-4 defensive end. Let those big, long offensive tackles get their hands on you, and they can pretty much take you where they want. That's where I think it's like, okay, the furthest we're going to play him out is a 3. But then we also, in order to do that, there's going to have to be reps where he's playing the 1, where he's playing, a 0, head up head up the center. And so, that's where I think it's at. When you look at his snap counts, I think he's played 1 snap out of the 42 that I think he's played this year where he was playing further out than a 3 tech. And I thought going in, just thought process, he'll be a 3 tech on the next level. Didn't really think about the nuances of the odd versus even fronts and what that meant. But otherwise, you have to, if he's on the field and you're saying, okay, we want to keep him playing inside in those, you either can't go odd fronts with him out there, or you got to put him as a defensive end or take him off the field, but then you got to be able to make the substitution. So that's something to at least keep in mind. It's just something I noticed, and it's something to keep an eye on, because I did think tackle to tackle, they were good at stopping the run last year. A lot of people don't realize that. I thought that the second level run fits, which are still an issue, and on that particular play, it's like, so to the backside, Edric Hill, he's supposed to be holding up in that B gap, but he sheds the offensive tackle inside, which puts him in the C gap to the backside. That opened up the backside B gap. I think Justin Jefferson sees that, and he sees sunshine, and his instinct as a linebacker is to show in this hole, which he does. The running back obviously sees that, which is why he didn't hit that hole, but then he bounced to the play side A, which I think was supposed to be Justin Jefferson's gap, and he tries to get over there, but by that point, he was a little late getting over there, and that's what gave the running back the crease to pick up the 9.5 yards. These are the kind of issues that I'm seeing crop up pretty consistently as far as the defensive front and guys working in unison. I think Kane Womack sees it too, and that's got to get fixed, because you got one linebacker who's banged up, still not 100%, and Deontay Lawson, he's trying to get there. You got an undersized guy in Justin Jefferson that can fly around, but as far as, going in those 3-man fronts where offensive linemen are going to get to climb on him a little bit, he's got to be more of a stack and shed type of guy in those looks. You look at a guy like Nikhai Hill-Green, he's still making adjustments as far as learning to play in the SEC and learning to play for Alabama. So it is, it's a combination of factors, but it is something to at least be weary of if you're an Alabama fan. I'm not saying everybody freak out, they're screwed. I'm saying watch against Wisconsin, try to see, how much movement is Wisconsin's offensive line getting off the football, where they kind of bullying Alabama's defensive front a little bit, because, on those double teams, if you got some 300-pound dudes, you're going to give up some ground if you're 284-pound Edric Hill, or Isaiah Faga playing as a, in there in the trenches as a 0 or a 1. Like, that's going to happen to an extent, but just seeing how it looks is something to at least keep an eye on. As far as Alabama's offense is concerned, first of all, injury updates. Do we know anything further about Jam Miller?
I hate even saying it because it's not one of my best sources, but I do think, let's just say, I think there's a real possibility we see Jam Miller, Saturday. I think that there's a real possibility. I feel almost certain we'll see Ryan. I mean, it's pretty rare that concussion protocol is going to keep somebody out for 2 full weeks. That would be a real surprise and something I'm certainly not expecting. So I think we see Ryan. We might see Jam. To me, the offense Saturday is about Ty in the sense that, and we already talked about earlier in the show, can Ty build on what happened at Monroe? But as you pointed out, build on doesn't mean better than 17 for 17. He's not going to do that, not against a legitimate Power 4 defense and the athletes they have. But can he build on it? Does he look comfortable? He didn't look comfortable the whole time in Tallahassee, and this challenge is going to be slightly more similar to Tallahassee than the challenge against Louisiana Monroe. Is Ty comfortable? Does the offensive line giving him a chance to operate when he's clean? His numbers are really good. Do they give it? Is he in a clean pocket? I would also like to see some more explosives. We haven't seen too many explosives, and I'm going to go ahead and bet that we do. I think one of my bold predictions, if you want to call it that way, is I think we get a home run from Kevin Riley And if I'm wrong, maybe one of the other backs that maybe jam if he's playing. But I think we get a home run from a back. We haven't seen that yet. Well, we AK Deer, but fourth quarter against Monroe's backups. I mean, first quarter, second quarter, get a home run from a back. And how about a home run also from a wide receiver? I'm going to say it's Ryan, because there's been a lot of pressure on Ryan. He wasn't part of the 73-point explosion, hasn't really made a big play in a while that resulted in a touchdown. Let's get Ryan going. For this team to be great, if there is a chance this team is great, Ryan's going to have to be a big part of that. That Ryan has to be a reason the team is great, and that needs to start now. So maybe I'm wish casting. I'm guilty of that at times, but I see an emphasis on explosives, and I bet Alabama gets at least one explosive from a back and from a wide out. And I'm going to guess it's Kevin Riley and Ryan.
Speaking of Ryan, it feels a little unfair. If people would have been sounding the alarm on Ryan Williams all throughout while we were all saying this guy's got a chance to be one of the best players in college football, hands down, one of the most dynamic playmakers. Talk about overall best players in college football. This guy's going to easily be top 5. He's going to have a chance to compete for a Heisman. When you're hearing all of us say this, but you're like, man, but he didn't finish last year strong, and we need to be concerned. Maybe you might hear that every once in a while. Hey, this is something that concerned me a little bit, but you didn't really. I mean, it was pretty universally accepted by everybody that this guy was going to be one of the best players in college football. But then he has one poor performance against Florida State in which everybody pretty much, other than a couple of guys, had a bad performance. And yet then people will say, you know what, in hindsight, the way he finished last year and the way he started this year, we got a big problem. Send him to the bench until he gets things fixed. If it's he's not working hard enough or he's not concentrating or whatever, even though one of the things that we've always heard about him was his work ethic off the field. I don't think that went anywhere. Maybe, it's possible, I guess, that he heard everybody singing his praises and he's gotten a big head and doesn't feel like he has to work as hard. Sure, I can acknowledge the possibility, but it just, to me,
doesn't sound like him.
It doesn't either, to me, based off of what I've heard, which I don't know the guy. And granted, he's a fun personality. He's very, lively. He's a young kid. He does some strange stuff, some stuff that I wouldn't personally do. But at the same time, it's also 2025, and I can acknowledge that there's a lot of things that people do nowadays that I wouldn't do.
I wouldn't do that stuff either. I'm too busy shaking my fists at the clouds.
Which is, I'm 1,000% closer there than I'm closer to the other way. But it's like, it just is strange to me, because if everybody would have been having these issues with him all throughout the offseason, and then he does this, it's like, see, I told you, see, and I'd be like, all right, you did, you know what? It's one game. Still think it's too early, but I can acknowledge that you're onto something. But it's like, it feels like people flipped based off of a poor performance against what I think is going to be a really good football team when everyone had a poor performance. It's just everybody else was given a chance to kind of show you. Bray Hubbard, everybody was roasting him, but he was able to get on the football field in week 2, show you that he is gonna that you're not gonna see that Bray Hubbard again. He's gonna go 110 miles an hour, and like everybody's like, okay, we're okay with you right now, Bray. Like we're still not happy, but we don't hate you and want you to go, transfer or anything like that. But Ryan wasn't given that opportunity because of a concussion, and it's like if he would have played against ULM, it's very possible he would have had a pretty fun stat line. If I'd guess, probably would have made at least one or two jaw-dropping plays against how bad they were defensively, and maybe no one would be saying any of this stuff. But he didn't get that opportunity, and I just think that for if you're gonna ride with somebody, ride with them. Don't ride with them when it's easy, because that's not a ride or die. It's literally, hey, as long as you're giving me what I need out of you, the second you stop for any sort of extended period of time, I'm out. I just don't think that's the way to go about it, Jimmy.
No. And this is why, see, I'm probably guilty of this. I should listen to more, but that's why everybody listen to this show. You're in the right place. I'm not going to break my arm patting ourselves on the back here, but I've heard rumors. I haven't heard them myself. I heard rumors that there's other podcasts, 2 or 3 was the rumor I read, saying that Alabama needs to bench Ryan Williams. And I don't know who those shows are, because again, I'll
fully acknowledge.
I listen to Clint shows, and I listen to me and Luke, and I listen to Clint and Clint shows.
I will fully admit, just to put it out there, my other co-host was kind of one of those people. So
I
I
think
didn't
that's
agree with it
great.
then.
And I'll tell him, I don't agree with that. I mean, that Ryan is the most gifted. He's probably the most gifted kid on the whole team. And yeah, he had drops. Julio Jones had drops. I mean, every great wide receiver, maybe other than Devontae, and Devontae, he did drop balls. Now, as soon as I say that, I remember Devontae dropping it. Ryan Williams is one of the greatest players in college football. There is going to be bumps in the road. We have to remember that he's only 18. And people say, oh, we can't say that anymore because he's not 17. I will say it. He's only 18. He's only 18. I think that's just going too far. And it's one of the things I don't know because I don't get the memos. That has never been, I'm comfortable saying that's never been discussed in the Alabama staff room.
That's
Never been discussed. Now, have they talked about ways to get Ryan right? Of course. But put him on the bench, never has that. I'm very comfortable saying it's never been brought up.
Especially when he is right now, Jeremy is dominating as the Z. Horton is not a slot. He is an X. He is an outside guy. So if you're going to have Ryan Williams in the lineup, Ryan Williams goes to the slot. And it's like it makes sense to a certain extent because he can be a pretty crafty route runner. He is good at getting open and getting separation. And he kind of, you can move him around. You know he can play outside. Now he's getting comfortable playing inside where you can move him around, create some matchups because going into the season, he was the guy that you wanted to do that with. And so it's like, but at the same time, he ended up playing a very large percentage of his snaps inside against Florida State, and he got a little banged up, and maybe he didn't look comfortable, didn't look confident. There's a reason that those guys are not built like Ryan Williams. Yeah. You know, those inside guys, you got to, I mean, freaking Jarvis Landry was pretty much a running back playing that position. It's like, you know, Wes Welker, compact build, Julian Edelman, like these guys aren't big guys, but they are a very tough. That is another very, very important element of, you know, this conversation that I don't think is talked about enough. You look at a guy like John Mechie, who was an outside receiver at Alabama, did play inside some, but everybody kind of knew when he made it to the NFL, he was probably going to be a slot. And it's like when you look at his build, it is much different than Ryan. There was a lot of reasons as to why it looked like it did on Saturday. I'm saying that if he returns against Wisconsin and it's more of the same, goes out there against Georgia, Alabama gets beat, it looks ugly, Ryan has more drops, Ryan struggled. It's like at that point when people want to start having that conversation then and say, look, it's not working with this dude. Like he's not at the very least, he's not being the guy that we need him to be, which is another part of this. Is it's not always about him catching footballs. It's what he's providing other people in the offense with his presence. We don't talk about that enough, but and because that was absolutely an aspect or an element when it comes to Florida State. You could tell by the way.
I talked about that on Twitter too. I mean, Jeremy's first ball that he caught against Florida State, the very first reception was wide open. Ryan had not 2, 3 Florida State defenders went with Ryan. That's why Jeremy was wide open. Now it was a bust on Florida State's part. They shouldn't have done that. They busted there, but it shows the attention that Ryan gets that opens up things for everybody else. And I'm with you. If Ryan drops 3 balls a game, I admit, let's reconvene on this mid-season. But it's going to take that for me to be on board with putting Ryan on the bench. Though I will say one guy, I'm not putting him on the bench because wide receiver is a position you have to rotate. So that's not, I mean, I get upset that we play too many players, but you've got to rotate at wide receiver. And this comes from our last show on Monday. I'm convinced myself for now, I feel like Alabama's best wide receiver lineup is Ryan and Jerm outside and Lazier Brooks at slot. I think that's the best lineup. Now, it's not what Alabama ideally wants because it lacks size there. You're really lacking some size when you do that. But I think Ryan's best position's outside. I think Jerm's best position's outside. I think Brooks' best position is the slot. So that sort of lines up. Now, I just accidentally put Zay Horton on the bench and Rico on the bench. I want to do that because they're starters to me, and they're good enough to play anywhere, including Alabama. We just happen to have 5 really, really good wide receivers right now, and we're just trying to find all the right spots for them. But my favorite lineup, which we haven't seen yet because Ryan hadn't played a lot with Lazier in the games, but I think my favorite lineup is Ryan and Germ outside with Lazier in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, I think from that's more of the right outlook where it's like guys that are how they win. There wasn't a whole lot of size when it comes to the right outs, but they had like it was a good combination where you had a quarterback that was built on accuracy, and you had a bunch of receivers who weren't big but could run the hell out of some routes, and they could get open and then they could create yardage after the catch. And you had a quarterback that could consistently put it on them in a position to get yardage after the catch. It fit. In this particular offense and kind of how they want to win, they do covet that size. But it's like, I think, just like we talked about on Monday, that is a great way where you're still getting Zay Horton on the field consistently, but Ryan Williams is also, because once again, I don't care what it looked like against Florida State. I'm not to a point where I'm going to go into a game thinking Ryan Williams is going to play half the snaps or 40% of the snaps. It'd be a rotational piece. He's a lot closer to Jeremy Bernard, where it's like he's going to be on the field outside of giving him a breather. Maybe he gets banged up, whatever, but he's going to be on the field a majority of the snaps. And it's like, okay, then where do you put him? I say there are going to be situations where you're putting him in the slot. I don't think that's going away. I don't think you're abandoning that when you spent the entire offseason preparing him for that after one game. But I do think that you say, okay, let's give him some opportunities to make some plays on the outside, because if you are lining him up out there and he's catching, and he has 2 touchdown catches as an outside receiver, and then you put him in the slot and he drops football, from a fan's perspective, we can forgive the drop. The 2 touchdowns were pretty big. So it's like, the problem is when he's playing exclusively in a situation where he's either not going to be comfortable or he's not yet comfortable. It's a different style. You're a lot closer to them linebackers, them headhunters, them safeties are coming down on you. The star position, the husky position, that's like a safety. Now, granted, Deshaun Jones is a former outside corner, but he's got a lot of physicality, which has allowed him to make that move inside. They're scrappy. They're tough. They got to be able to hold up against the run. They're a lot more physical than your outside receivers. And so it's like, it's a different position, and he's still adjusting. So give him a little time to adjust before we completely write off what was expected to be one of my top player in my roster rankings. Not saying, because Clint put him up there. That means I'm saying that's how high I thought of him. And a lot of people
number one too. I do roster rankings too. He's my number one also. Best player on the team.
And so it's like, let's just not. I think that's a bad look for other fan bases to say, dude, this is how little they care about their players. The guy that they all were saying was going to be a prodigy and Mr. Everything, they bailed on him after one game.
He also makes $1.8 million, which is the highest amount of anybody on the football team. And I know that y'all might think that that's not like, a factor, but it is a factor because it's how they recruit other highly recruited guys. Are like, look, this guy plays here, makes $1.8 million. It's not as good of an example if he's on the bench. And in Major League Baseball or NFL football, the highest paid players are not on the bench. The highest paid player gets to play bad a whole bunch of games before they ever put him on the bench. He's the highest paid player on the team. It's like, so that's another reason. I mean, Ron's not going on the bench unless Tallahassee becomes what he is going forward. And I refuse to believe that, but I will admit, hey, if it keeps happening, let's talk about it again. Probably somewhere around Missouri or South Carolina.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. He gets paid a lot of money. So if somebody's like, hey, you're getting paid a lot of money, you got to produce. I get that. That expectation is fair. Give him time to produce. Don't write him off after one
game.
Yeah, that's my point. It's not that you're saying the wrong things. You're saying them at the wrong time. So let's wait. And if everything's still happening like it did against Florida State or even anything close, then it's like, okay, I'll be right there with you, by the way. I'll be right there with everybody that's criticizing and saying, hey, they're not getting out of you what they need to. You're supposed to be one of their stars and you're not playing like a star. Then we can have that conversation.
Some Dodgers fan saves up all year and he goes to see the Dodgers play and Shohei Ohtani goes 0 for 4. Is that guy going, I thought y'all said this guy was good. He's 0 for 4. Paid all that money. He's 0 for 4. I thought y'all said he was good. It's sports.
That is exactly right. And I understand what they're doing is he's supposed to be a star player. Alabama could have really used its star players to play like star players against Florida State. maybe things would have looked a little different had they. But, once again, other guys have been given a chance to kind of right the ship. Give him a chance too as well before you just assume it's he's got to earn it again. No, he earned it.
Oh, he already earned it.
Yeah, he's earned it. He needs if he's going to, what needs to be earned is the bench. Like, he needs to earn it through not just one good game's not going to automatically make you a full-time starter, Mr. Everything, but one bad game ain't going to take all that away from you either. So, and I think that there were issues last year as far as the connection between him and Jalen Milroe.
Right.
I think Milroe struggles as far as the accuracy. Tennessee, LSU wasn't really all that great through the air. Most of his success on the ground. Auburn, everybody said
that Milroe's best games were in the first half of the season, and Ryan's games were the best first. When Milroe was rough second half of the season, Ryan's numbers went down. Why does this surprise people?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and I understand we just spent 10, 15 minutes, ragging on people who were ragging on Ryan, and I'm not trying to do that, either. I'm just
trying to point out why we should all be behind Ryan.
Exactly. And I just think when you're on social media and stuff like him, it was very poor timing with the $1.8 million post from On3, because everybody's like, I'm already mad at him. And see, it was not the time for that. On3 doesn't care. Understandably, they're sharing news. That's their job. But it's just, I don't think it is a good look when you're trying. It's like that people will do that and they'll attack a player, and then they'll be surprised when another star player is like, then if I go over there and my quarterback and me are not on the same page for half a season, but then everybody hypes me up as one of the best players, but then I play one bad game when everybody played a bad game, everybody's going to jump off, my bandwagon and want me benched or to transfer or to leave or whatever. I don't know that I really want to do that. A lot of fan bases deal with that. I'm saying I'm trying to deter that as much as I can, because a lot of people maybe will have to be deleting a lot of tweets and comments at some point, but we'll have to wait and see. Once again, I'm not going to guarantee that. I will say I lean that a lot more than him continuing to struggle like he has. I'm not saying he's not going to drop a football either moving forward. That's another thing. That's part of his game. He's a guy who I didn't want to post practices last year, because I would see every practice, the open practice that we went to, is like he was dropping at least one football going through those drills. And then he would go up there and make some of the most miraculous, crazy catches you've ever seen. It's always been an issue. Some guys have that issue. Guys get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft despite having some of those issues. It's something that you kind of learn to live with. Hopefully it gets better and more consistent, but just, he's going to be a hell of a player. I fully believe that. Jimmy, you got anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
Nah, just like Alabama to win this weekend by, roughly that spread. I'll say 35-14.
I'm right there with you. I was thinking like a 35-14, 37-17, anything in there, mid-30s, maybe climb, and then mid to high teens. I can see any of that for Wisconsin. If it's not that, then, we'll definitely have to evaluate how it looks. But, I'm definitely with you. I appreciate you hopping on here with me. Appreciate everybody who always listens in. We appreciate you guys way more than you could ever know. Love you guys, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game.
Let's roll.
In here, I call the plays, make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.